If you're a YouTuber, you might have wondered how you can export a list of your subscribers. This might be for your own analytics, or if you're hosting a giveaway, you might want to make sure the winner has actually subscribed to your channel. YouTube Studio currently doesn't offer that feature, but with a few lines of code, we can automate this process together. So hey everyone, my name is Jackson, and today we'll be going through how we can export a list of our public subscribers to a spreadsheet that is updated every day. We'll be using Google Apps Script along with the YouTube Data API and Google Sheets API to assist the process. Now I know you're all excited, so let's dive right in. So the first thing we want to do is head over to Google Apps Script, and you can do that by just navigating to script.google.com in your browser, and we'll be directed to this page. And essentially what this is a framework that allows us to run JavaScript-like code that will interface with the Google Workspace platform, and that basically includes a set of products such as Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Docs, and whatever, pretty much anything on Google Drive. And you can interface with that programmatically. And it's meant for small workloads such as the project ID here, which is just to export a list of subscribers to Google Sheets. So we can do that. And once you're here, you can just click on New Project. We'll just give a second to load. Once it's loaded, we can just quickly rename this to Export Public Subscribers. And I'm just going to quickly mention this tutorial, we're only able to export public subscribers because YouTube allows users to hide their set of subscriptions. And if a user has done that, their subscriptions will not be publicly available. So in other words, you will not be able to see whether they have subscribed to you or not. And hence, we will not be able to retrieve that level of data. But yeah, it depends on the user's own privacy settings. But for now, most people actually leave it public, so we will be able to extract quite a few subscribers. So yeah, let's get started. The main thing in terms of configuration is setting up like the permissions in terms of what we want to do programmatically. And the first thing we want to do is head over to the left sidebar and just click into project settings here. And we're going to click show appscript.json manifest file in the editor. And then we can head over back to editor, and this will allow this file to appear, the appscript.json. And this allows us to set some configuration things for our appscript project. So I'm just going to paste this in here since I have pre-written it. But basically, we want another field called OAuthScopes, and this is going to take an array of strings, and the scopes that we want to specify are the spreadsheet scope and the YouTube.read-only scope. So make sure you copy this. I'll probably drop it down in the description below so you can paste it as well. But once this is pasted, we can just hit save. You can do Control or Command S depending on your machine. And then we can head over back to code.js. I'm assuming this stands for Google Script, but you'll see in a second that most of this is just regular JavaScript. But yeah, the next thing we want to do in terms of configuration is under services, we just want to add one thing, and we want to add YouTube Data API v3. This is the current latest version supported at the moment. So we're just going to check this off, and this allows us to access the YouTube almost like Data API SDK sort of in our code, which we'll see immediately now. But yeah, so I'm just going to clear this up because I'm actually, if you notice here, I'm actually using V8, and I believe it should also take ES5 JavaScript. So we're just going to be using arrow functions, and no worries if you don't know what arrow functions are. You'll see in a second what the syntax looks like. It doesn't really matter too much, but yeah, let us just begin. So the first thing we want to do is create a new variable, and I'm just going to call this spreadsheet ID. I'm just going to store it as an empty string for now. And then we also want to create another variable called sheet1 name, and this is basically going to store the name of the sheet inside the spreadsheet that we want to modify. By default, it's just going to be called sheet1. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly save this, and I'm going to head over to a spreadsheet that I've already created. So as you can see here, it's totally empty, and by default, the first sheet is always called sheet1 with a capital S. But yeah, just to extract the ID though, it's going to be in the URL here, and it's going to be in between the /d and the /edit part. So just make sure you copy everything here. So once that is copied, we can head over back to the script, and we can just paste it inside the quotations for this variable. And awesome, once these global variables have been declared, we can start writing our main function. And I'm just going to call this getPublic subscribers, and this is going to be an arrow function. And awesome, so now we can just start writing some code. So the first thing we want to do is to actually call the YouTube API and extract the list of subscriptions. And we can do that by creating a variable and accessing the YouTube service here. And this can be accessed by typing in YouTube. And this gives us a set of services or classes that we can access And the main thing that we want in this case is subscriptions, and we want to list them. We don't need to insert or remove anything, definitely not remove. So we'll just be listing. And if we visit back to the documentation page under subscriptions list, we can see that there's a lot of things that we can list here. Namely, we can list the content details, the ID, snippet, and the subscriber snippet. So the main thing, the subscriber information is going to be held in subscriber snippet, so that's the main thing that we want. But if we want other details, such as like when they subscribed, I believe that should be available under content details. You can take a look at the full documentation of what fields are available in a second. So I'll leave those in the description as well, but let's just move forward. But one thing I want to mention quickly is that this API has a max result setting. I believe the maximum is 50, if I recall correctly, but there's a way to circumvent that, and that's basically allowing us to do some sort of pagination. And basically in every response, if there is more data, it will return a next page token. And basically all you have to do is pass this in the next call to the API, and that will return the next set of 50 or however many subscribers. So we're just going to write some code to quickly do that. But first off, we definitely need to make an initial call without any page token because we haven't made any calls yet. So we don't have any page token to pass. But yeah, it's going to be YouTube subscription.list. And the first argument is going to be a comma separated list of the fields we just described. So we want subscriber snippet. We also want snippet, and we also want content details. And depending on what you want to export, you might not need all of this, so you can make your data smaller, but I'm just going to export all of them for now. And the second argument we can pass is a set of arguments or options. One of them is my subscribers, and make sure that you're using my subscribers and not, if I can just find it here, sorry. Right. Make sure you're using my subscribers and not my recent subscribers, as since my recent subscribers will only retrieve the most recent 1,000 subscribers, but my subscribers does not have a limit. So just make sure you're using this one. Just be careful about that. But anyway, we're going to pass a value of true for this, and we're going to specify a sorry, I'm not sure what that's blocking there. We're going to pass another field called max results, and we're going to pass in a value of 50, which I believe is the maximum. Whatever it is, just make sure to pass the maximum. I'm going to use 50 for now. So once that is done and we've passed our, we've made our first call, we can actually start to begin to parse this data. And the first thing we want to parse is, of course, the next page token. So I'm going to create a new variable, and I'm just call this next page token. And I'm going to extract it by doing results.nextPageToken. Awesome. So here comes the pagination part, and essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create a loop, and we're going to check that as long as the next page token exists, then we're going to keep calling the YouTube subscriptions API. So we're going to do something really similar here, youtube.subscriptions.list, and we're going to pass this exact same comma separated string once again, and along with the same set of options here as well. Except for inside the options, we're going to include one more field, and you probably guessed it, it's going to be the page token. And it's going to be, we're going to pass the value of next page token, which is the variable that we declared earlier on. So we're just going to put a semicolon there, and awesome. Once that is done, we just want to reassign next page token so that we have the new next page token on the next iteration of the loop. So we're going to do result.next page token once again. And we should actually create an array to store all our subscribers. So I'm just going to create one here. I'm going to create const subs. And it's just going to be an empty array. Actually, no, sorry. It's not going to be an empty array at first. At first, it's going to store the set of 50 subscribers that we retrieved in the initial call. And it's going to be under the field called items, and this is going to be an array of objects. And of course, we're going to use the spread operator here, which is just triple dots. And this will allow us to basically produce a copy of everything in the result.items and paste it into this array. And so likewise, we're going to see a similar syntax. I'm just going to do subs.push. This will append things to the existing array. Once again, we're going to use the spread operator. We're going to do result.items. So this will allow us to append all the new result items onto the existing subs array. And we're just going to hit save, and awesome. So that's pretty much it for handling the pagination for retrieving all your subscriptions. It may take a while depending on how many subs you have, but overall this script shouldn't take too long. So yeah, let's move forward. Now we can handle the part about basically connecting to our spreadsheet that we have created earlier here and basically writing all this data in a correct format. So what we want to do is first get the spreadsheet. So we can do spreadsheet app.openById, and this is going to be the spreadsheet ID. And we've already created a global variable at the top, so we're just going to reference that as such. And we can also reference create a variable reference to get the sheet, and we can do spreadsheet.getSheetByName. And we've also created a variable for this sheet1 name, so we can reference it as such. Now there's a special method that we'll be using a lot, or class that we'll be using a lot in the spreadsheets class of methods. And basically it allows us to get a set of data ranges. And what a data range is basically a range of, if this will load, sorry, it's basically a range of cells. For example, this would be a range of cells from columns A to C and rows like 1 to 1,000 or however many rows there are. And basically we want to specify data range of values to write, or overwrite or replace or update or whatever. And that's the main way we're going to interface with different cells on the spreadsheet. And so in order to access the data range, or the specific range, we can create a new variable called data range, and and we can create it by referencing sheet1, and it has a function called getDataRange. And basically, getDataRange, this function specifically will allow us to get the range that has that contains cells with actual data in them. So right now, none of the cells actually have data in them, so this range will just contain an empty set of cells, and that's fine. We'll add data later on. The next thing I want to do is create another range called sub-IDs range, and basically this is going to be a new range, and we're going to use this to reference the range that contains all the subscriber IDs, and this will help us. This will mostly be useful when we run this script daily, just so that we don't pretty much add duplicates to the spreadsheet. And you'll see in a second why we need this. But what we're going to do is we're going to call sheet1.getRange. So this is not getDataRange, it's just going to be getRange. And the first argument we're going to pass is the starting index of the range row that we want to specify. And by default, all rows and columns and whatnot are 1 based indexed in this API. So we're just going to pass row 1. And I'm just going to be storing all the subscriber IDs or channel IDs pretty much on the second column. I'm going to be storing the name in the first column, and we'll see that in a second. But because the IDs are in the second column, I'm going to pass in 2 for the column starting index. And we also want to use the data range here, which is the set of the range of the set of cells with actual data in them. And I'm going to call the getNum rows. So this will tell us how many rows are actually have data in them, or essentially how many subscribers are already on the spreadsheet. And this will be the end index of, how many rows of data to retrieve. And the last parameter or argument we want to pass in is 1. This just tells us how many columns we want to retrieve. And in this case, we only need 1 column, which is the second column, as that's going to be storing all our channel or subscriber IDs. So we'll just hit semicolon. And now that all our ranges are specified, we can do some filtering. So the main goal of filtering here is that we want to filter out all the subscribers that we have already retrieved and already stored on the spreadsheet. And this is only useful when we are running the script daily, which is the main goal of this project. But you can also just tweak this out or skip ahead if you don't want this code, in case like you're just running this once manually or something. So yeah, we're just going to go ahead. We're creating a new variable called current subscriber IDs or current sub IDs, and we're going to use the sub IDs range, and we're going to call it the get values function, and this will allow us to get all the values inside this range. And it's going to be an array, so we can call all the JavaScript array functions. I'm going to call map, and this is going to pass in 1 argument, which is the subscriber ID, and it's going to be a row. So most of the data we'll be working with in terms of the spreadsheet is going to be a 2D matrix or 2D array, depending on how you want to interpret that. So because of that, the subscriber ID we actually want is inside an array, and it's going to be inside the first element because it's a column of one value. So that's why it's just going to be the first element. So we'll put that in, and yeah, we'll put a semicolon. And afterwards, we can create a new variable called new subs, and this will essentially contain the filtered out version removing all the current subscribers in the spreadsheet. So we can do that by calling subs, and if you call subs, if you recall, subs is the array of all the subscribers that we have retrieved from the API, and this is going to include all our subscribers ever, unless they unsubscribe. But yeah, we're just going to call filter because we're performing a filter operation, and we're going to pass in one argument, which is the subscriber, and we're going to check to see that the current subscriber IDs array does not include the current ID of the the subscriber that we're iterating on. So we can retrieve the ID from going from accessing under sub.subscriber snippet and channel ID. So yeah, the channel ID is the same as the subscriber ID. So once that is done, new subs should contain an array of all the filtered subscribers. And now we can just quickly generate the 2D matrix of essentially the values that we want to store onto the spreadsheet. So I'm just going to create a variable called values, and we're going to use new subs, and we're going to map this to a 2D array, and it's just going to take one argument called sub. We'll just set this up here, and I'm just going to quickly retrieve a useful, or sorry, I'm just going to quickly store a local variable here. I'm going to call this sub.subscriber snippet, and I'm going to store it under a variable called snippet, just because we're going to access it quite frequently here. But basically what we're going to do is that by default map returns an array. But because we're working with 2D arrays, we need to make sure everything we iterate on and return after every iteration is going to be another array, so a nested array. And this will essentially produce a 2D array for us once this is all done. So the first thing I want to store is snippet.title, and this is going to be the subscriber's name or whatever username that appears on YouTube or channel name. And after that, as mentioned earlier, I'm going to be storing the channel ID as a second column. And afterwards, I actually want to format it so that we have a link that we can directly click on to navigate to the YouTube channel. And this is really similar to what the YouTube Studio currently displays in terms of data, but we can't export it, which is the main reason why we're doing this. So I'm just kind of trying to mimic that here so we have as much data as possible. Basically, to format the URL, we're going to make sure we use the backtick here so we can do string interpolation. https://www.youtube.com/channel/ and we're going to do $ open brace snippet.channel ID close brace, and this will allow us to basically generate a link or hyperlink that we can click on immediately, which will direct us to the subscriber's channel. And yeah, now the last thing we want to include is just the subscriber's published at date, and this is essentially the date which the subscriber has subscribed to our channel. So it's just going to be under sub.snippet.published at, and we're just going to put a semicolon at the end for good practice. And now our values have all been generated. So basically, just to clarify, and once again, this part may be a little confusing. The reason why it's a 2D array is because Google Sheets, the API, only works with 2D arrays. And if you think about it, the spreadsheet is essentially just a giant 2D array in 2 dimensions. And so inside the nested array, it will essentially follow the order of columns of column values of which we want to specify. So the first column, we're going to be storing all the titles, which is essentially the channel names. Second column is going to be the channel ID, and so forth. And awesome. So once all of the values have been generated, we can just do a quick check here to see if there are any values here, for example, then we will actually want to insert into the spreadsheet. But if there are not any values, we can just quickly log it and say like we're ending the script because there's nothing to insert, right? And the reason why I'm doing this is actually because there's an error that's thrown if you try to insert no values. Anyway, so we can actually access this thing called logger, which is available inside the app script. You can also just use console.log. I'll just use logger for now. It's pretty much the same. Anyway, so logger.log, we can just write a quick message saying script terminating as there are 0 new subs. Kind of sad, but oh well. Anyway, when there are new subscribers that exist, we will make sure that we add them in. And one thing that we want to be careful here is that we want to specify the correct range that we want to add these values in. And the main reason why this is a little tricky is because we may already have existing data inside the spreadsheet, so we don't want to overwrite any existing cells. We only want to start writing on the next like blank cell. So for example, if I had subscribers starting from 1, 2, rows 1 and 2, if I had 2 subscribers, then I only want to start writing at row 3. So yeah, that's the main purpose of this. So we're just going to write some logic here, and basically we're going to start off by creating a new variable called row start index, and this is going to store the starting index of which basically the starting index of the next blank row. And to calculate that, it's really simple. We're just going to do data range, and we're going to do get num rows. And once again, this will allow us to get the number of rows in the spreadsheet that actually have data in them. And so it will end off on the last row that actually has data. So we can just add 1 because that will tell us the next row that has no data. Sorry, my bad. We're going to make sure that we're going to check if this equals 1. My apologies. The main reason why we're checking if this is 1 is because by default, when the spreadsheet is empty, we want to make sure that when the spreadsheet is empty, it's going to return 1. I'm not sure why, it's a little confusing, but it's just the way it is. So we're gonna have to handle that. But when the spreadsheet is empty, we want to specify the starting index as row 1, basically the first row. When it is not empty, then we want to get the number of rows plus 1, which is the next blank row. So I apologize for that. Hopefully that part wasn't too confusing. But anyway, the next thing we want to do is create a new variable called insertion range, and this will basically store the range at which we will be inserting all our new data. And we can create this once again by calling sheet1.getRange, and we'll be passing 4 arguments, namely the first one is going to be the starting index for the row, so row start index, and we're going to be specifying the starting column index, and we'll just be starting at column 1, so we'll pass 1. And the next one we want to specify is the number of rows we want to insert. And we already have an array here of how many values we have. So we can just reference the length argument there. And the last but not least, because we have 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, and 4, we can just specify the number of columns as 4 here as well. And awesome. And just to quickly wrap up, to quickly insert this all, we can just call insertion range.setValues, and we'll pass in the values to the array. And once that is done, one thing I like to do, especially since this column is going to be particularly long since it has a long piece of text, one thing we can do is actually call sheet1.auto-resize columns, and we can select a range of columns that we want to automatically resize so that everything becomes more legible or spaced out. The first argument is going to be the starting column index, and the second argument is going to be this end column index. And because we have 4 columns, it's just going to be columns 1 to 4. And awesome. I'm just going to include a quick log as well, and we can just say values.length, new subs added to the spreadsheet. Awesome. Okay, and just hit a semicolon at the end and hit save. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up the code for the script. As you can see, it's not very many lives, only like 37, and this will pretty much get the job done. So let's just quickly test it. I'm going to click run here. Make sure you have selected the correct function. This will actually, the first time you run it, will open up some open authentication stuff, which will open authorization stuff, which will make you log in and essentially allow the application to run. So as you can see here, it took a while. This is just the first time. It takes a while. We'll click review permissions. And yeah, so I'm going to click that, select the user you want, and it's going to say Google hasn't verified this app. That's fine. I'm going to click into advanced. And I'm going to click go to export public subs unsafe, just because I'm the one who wrote this code. So I trust myself, or I trust the script. Just make sure you click allow here. And awesome. And you only have to do this the first time you do it, the first time you run it. So yeah, awesome. As you can see here, I currently have 104 public subscribers, so it's been added to the spreadsheet. If we just visit back to the spreadsheet here, we can see all our public subscribers listed here, which is perfect. I'm not sure yet, but I might blur some of these out just to keep things private. I don't think there's a rule about it, but I haven't decided yet. Anyway, so once that is done, we can now just quickly set the daily trigger, which will allow the script to run in a daily manner. And you can do that by heading over to, on the left side here, just head over to triggers. Awesome. Okay, and we can just click into add trigger. and we want to choose which function to run. We only have one, which is get public subscribers. We don't actually need to deploy anything automatically. It's going to be selected as head, which is fine. And we want to make sure it's time driven. And you can select the trigger at which you want your script to run. I'm just going to set it as daily because I don't need this information that frequently. Day is fine. And usually I like to select this as midnight to 1 a.m. Since it's going to be an end of the day job. And you can also configure other notification settings if your script fails. I'm just going to click notify me immediately because I would like to know. And once these settings are done, just click save. It's as simple as that. And awesome. So this is done. I guess I can't really demonstrate right now that it works, but trust me that it does. If you set it to more frequently, like every minute, you'll see that it gets executed every minute. And you can see all your executions under executions. Once it does execute, you'll be able to see it here and any logs that display as well. And yeah, so that's pretty awesome. That pretty much wraps up most of this. Before we end, I just wanted to quickly mention some of the performance issues with this, or not really issues, but just concerns. So basically, if you noticed here, we have one line here that is rather inefficient. And basically inside the filter operation, we're also checking and includes. And this is going to be a bit technical. So if you're not technical, that's totally fine. You can skip right ahead. But basically, we're checking, we're going through the entire list of current subscriber IDs for every single element in subs. And that's rather inefficient. I've actually ran some performance tests, so I'm just going to read out the results. But basically, with 100,000 subscribers, this overall took around maybe like 8 to 10 seconds. That's totally fine. If you visit the quotas page, you can see that under here, the current limitations, you only get 6 minutes per execution for the script time. And so 10 seconds is perfectly fine. What becomes an issue is if you have like around 1 million subscribers. It timed out for me. I'm not sure how long it would actually take, but definitely 6 minutes was not enough. So that becomes an issue if you're doing this operation. However, if you're not running the script daily and just once instead, like for example, if you're doing a giveaway once in a while and you're just running it once, then you don't need this filter line of code. You don't need a lot of these lines. For example, this line you don't need this line either, and you don't need to get the subscriber IDs range because there will be nothing in the spreadsheet when you execute this anyway. So you can remove all those. Then if you like say I have 1 million subscribers, it doesn't take very long. I think it only took me maybe like a few seconds, like 10 seconds again. So yeah, that's really great. But yeah, so definitely this will scale to a lot of subscribers if you have that many. And of course, a simple alternative to this is just to programmatically or manually clear the spreadsheet every time you run it or run the rest of the code. And that will work perfectly fine without this filtering. But if you don't want to lose historical data, definitely you should keep the filtering in. And just to demonstrate, if I run this again, it should say that I have inserted 0 subscribers because there are 0 new subscribers to insert. We've already inserted the 104 that have currently subscribed. So hopefully you learned something from this video. But for now, I hope you're all staying happy and well out there as this wraps up the video. And as always, take care.